Hey, this is Mo, and I'm your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. I'm having a blast today because I've recorded 5 episodes. This is the first of 5 with Jane Allen. Jane is the founder and former CEO of Counsel on Call, which became Legality. They basically created an entire new way of practicing law and created an entire category called legal services provider. And her journey from school teacher to lawyer to big law firm to starting Counsel on Call and then scaling it up to 1,200 lawyers is inspiring. And in this episode, we talk about her humble beginnings of business development and some of the early days and how she sort of got into it and realized she needed to do what she needed to do when it comes to business development. I think you're really going to like this episode. I love the authenticity of it, and I just always learn something when I talk to Jane. So before we get into it, know that if you're stretched for time, if you need to deepen relationships, we've got a white paper for you. It's called High Impact Relationship Deepeners, and it details 7 different ways that you can deepen relationships and at least start deepening relationships in, no joke, in 5 minutes or less. These are the kind of things you can do quickly and get the ball rolling. And you get that by going to growbigplaybook.com. So head over to growbigplaybook.com and you can sign up, get it right away. All right, here is Jane Allen. Hey everybody, it's Mo Bunnell, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. I'm grinning from ear to ear because I've got Jane Allen with me. Jane is one of the most successful rainmakers that I've ever gotten the pleasure to work with. Her entrepreneurial story is insane, and she's going to cut to the chase of it, cut to the heart of it as we do these 5 episodes together. So Jane, you're now CEO of the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center. You've taken what you've learned and building up a massive organization, having an exit, have it just impacted thousands of people's lives if you include your employees, their clients, all the people they work with. So first big question, tell me of the moment where you realized you needed to focus on this thing called business development. Maybe in your mind it was growth. Maybe it was, well, I don't know, just drop me into the moment where you realized this is a thing, I'm going to focus on it.
That's a great question. I was a lawyer practicing law. And to be very candid with you, Mo, one reason I went to law school is when I was in college, I had read Death of a Salesman. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to grow up and become Willy Loman. And so, I ended up in law school, and it was a couple years out of law school that I realized any successful lawyer is a really good Willy Loman. Because at the end of the day, what I really loved was working with clients to solve their problems and really developing relationships. And then once you solve one problem, they want you to solve more problems. And so I started growing a book of business, never intentional, but just really out of working with individual clients where they were and helping them get where they wanted to go and developing a relationship and asking, well, why do you do it this way? And what do you think? So it was more than just, oh, I'm hiring you to try this case. It was, well, to try this case, I need to understand you and I need to understand your business and so I think it was while I was practicing law that I realized I just loved. That's what I loved about the practice of law, was working with the clients to solve their problems.
So then, a lot of people, they just need to hear your story, Jane. So at some point, I assume you're practicing law and you decide, I see a niche in the marketplace. I see this company I should go for. So you've already got a deep technical expertise. You've realized you want to be the next Willy Loman, and and you go off on your own. Tell me about that step in the journey, how it started. Continue.
Yeah, well, Mo, it would be great if I really thought what you just said. What I really thought was there are too many women leaving the profession, and I understood why. As a woman who had a child, I just thought it is such an all-consuming profession, and that's fabulous for so many. But there are others that I always said had challenges practicing when life intervened. And whether the life intervention was an ill parent, whether it was an ill child, whether it was a birth of a child, just a lot of different variables. And I thought, we are losing so many amazing lawyers, many of them women. And at the same time, we have a variable client base, but we have a static hiring base. And how I wanted to be able to get access to some people that I knew that had left the profession, that were at home, and thought, I don't need them to come in and be in my expensive real estate. I don't need them to be, having to bill X number of hours. I really need them to platoon in and help me solve a problem for a client, and to be able to do it cost effectively. So it was with all of those things in my brain, and then also being blessed to be married to a brilliant man who said, I think you're on to the practice of law.
Mm.
And there, and so he really encouraged me to actually take the next step, which was, as any lawyer, look at every reason I shouldn't do it. And then, very risk averse. And then actually I had the benefit of clerking for a federal judge. And so I had gone back to my federal judge, and then he had actually loaned me out during my clerkship. So I knew a few federal judges, and I went back and said, I've got this idea about allowing lawyers to do what they love, but not being traditional associate to partnership track employees. What do you think? And so that was where it really took off. One of the judges named the company Counsel on Call, and that was really the beginning of it. And so it was from that it all started.
This is so fascinating, Jane, because I've never actually talked to you about the genesis of it in this way. Mm-hmm. I thought you started Counsel on Call to meet a need in the marketplace, where, to do all the things that you did at Counsel on Call. Then, of course, new names after that, but you actually started to meet the needs of the lawyers.
Absolutely.
Like. Oh, fascinating.
And the law firms. I mean, the irony was, I started it thinking the law firms, had a challenge of hiring so many lawyers, knowing a lot of them were not going to make it. And I just thought, from a business sense standpoint, I just questioned, because again, it's a variable client base now. But it was really for the need of the lawyers.
Yeah. Okay. This is so cool. So now I want to know the next chapter in your journey. So maybe there's a book and a play to write about the Jane Allen story, the birth so of a salesman.
Exciting. So exciting. Yeah.
The birth of a saleswoman. That's what we'll call it. Mm-hmm. So you decide, you test this in the marketplace, you decide, this is a thing, I can do this. And then, of course, you make the leap, I assume, where you all of a sudden you have zero pay, you have no salary, you've got this idea. You talk about have to bring in business, having become a rainmaker fast. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that pressure you felt, how you started to figure out business development at a new level, starting a company. Go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, starting a new company, it was really. And understand, I had 3 children in 3 years, and I practiced law full time. And I had, I was a child with a mother, and, and so I really wasn't one of those networkers. I was not the person that's going to all the events, nothing. Yeah. And so when I started the company, what I really had going for me is I had the good fortune of working with an amazing law firm with partners who were very well respected. And we had what back in the 90s, early 2000, it was the old Nashville Bar Association book. And because I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and it had pictures of every lawyer and their phone number. And so I would dial for dollars. I mean, I didn't know, Mo, I wasn't a skilled I didn't know what business development really was. I didn't know cold calling, but what I would do is I would not leave until I had made 10 phone calls. Wow. And try to get meetings. And then I would track it all. And so I ended up creating metrics. So I knew how many phone calls I really needed to make in order to get a meeting. And then I started tracking meetings to know how many meetings I needed to make in order to actually get an order. But it really did start simply looking through the bar journal, and then it would be, I can't go home because I haven't made my 10th call. Yeah. And oh my God, I don't want to make this call. Oh my God, they're going to think I'm an idiot. All the little insecurity voices that are in your brain. But then it would be, put on big girl pants. You chose to do this, so let's go. And thankfully, a lot of them were willing to take the call, and a lot of them helped me create what became a really good business. Yeah. But that was because people would take the call. And it was more, I would ask them if they would take time to talk with me about the business versus I want to sell you. And
Right.
so, because I just put myself in their shoes. I mean, if somebody's wanting to sell me, I'm trying to get my work done. I'm not going to take, but if somebody said, hey, listen, I've worked at this law firm, I've started this company, I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Most everybody, I mean, I have a list of the people that told me no. And so most said yes, thankfully, as far as willing to meet with me or take a phone call. And then it was with that, once you started talking, oh, I know a lawyer. Oh my God, there's this amazing woman and she left because she ended up getting sick, but she's wanting to get back in, or, oh
Yes.
my gosh. And so it just really started snowballing.
Brilliant. So I tell you, I was just on a training class, a Groby training class this morning, training some high end executives, management consultants in Europe, and had a great conversation with them. And one of the things people hesitate, especially in the extremely technical professions, law, consulting, account managers at healthcare companies, everything, is we can tend to not ask for help. And I just want to hit this head on because you had success using the method of asking for help, asking for advice, asking for giving their perspective. So tell me what it felt like to make that request. Tell me what they told you, how it felt like to help you.
Yeah, well, one, it was legitimate. I mean, I think I really did want to get their input and their
Yep.
thought. And so it wasn't superficial at all. I
Right.
think authenticity, I hope, is at my core, and I hope that was always perceived. And so it really was a legitimate, I wanted to help change, I wanted to create a company to help change the profession for the better. And that sounded
Yep.
so Pollyanna and that sounded so ridiculous. But in some small little way, if I could keep a woman in the practice, and then I was successful. So I really didn't start this, to go back to your earlier question, to be a business icon or the best Willy Loman. I really started it to allow a few women I knew to stay in the practice of law.
Yep.
And so I think that it was a different mindset. And so for most of your audience members, that's what I said. It's just I was an entrepreneur that was really trying to solve a problem. And I needed the voices of the people that are actually living in that industry to pour into my head so that I could really understand if the problem really existed. And if it did, what was the solution to it?
Yep.
And so I think that was so for me, it was, and I still do that to this day. I've never professed to have all the answers. I have some, but I would never profess to have all the answers. And so I
Yep.
need to hear voices of people that are either one living in it and or two experts, that or have thought a lot or read a lot about it so that I can listen to help create solutions.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much there. I want to tell the audience right now, we're going to dig into all this stuff and more. So I'm fascinated by so many things, Jane, like how you tracked metrics, how you had your why. You know, you were doing this for a very compelling reason that was authentic, and how you would share that why with others. People want to follow somebody that shares why they're doing something when it has a compelling reason. So many other things. But I think we should wrap up this episode with this,
Mhm.
just so people understand the scale and the success that you had. And you're not somebody who touts your success a lot. I needed you to just tell the audience, because you'll be able to help them more if you're honest. Track through those first couple years of revenue numbers, staffing numbers, hours billed numbers, number of women you helped numbers, whatever you considered success. You're in there, you're making 10 phone calls a day. What did the numbers look like over those first couple years, and what did it end up at the end when you left?
Well, in the beginning, the irony was the first lawyer I placed was a male, not a female. And his wife was a general counsel of a public company who traveled globally, and he
Yeah.
needed to be available when she would get in town. And at the big firm, he didn't have any control over his schedule.
Yep.
And so, good lessons for me to learn at all times. But yeah, so it started with one lawyer working at one law firm. And after a first 2, 3 years, we had 3 offices in Memphis and Atlanta and Nashville. And we were definitely not making a lot of money, but we were definitely allowing lawyers to practice in a way that didn't exist before. And then some were practicing in a way that did exist before, and we were trying our darndest to make it better. Um, and so I think, by the end, we ended up throughout US and in parts of Europe. When we sold to the private equity firm. Now, the private equity firm, who was a fabulous partner, just sold our company to a competitor, and that but before doing so, we were in 32 countries.
Wow.
And thousands of lawyers around the world working with us.
If you had to guess how many lawyers were on your team, what was your latest guess, sort of at least when you sold?
When we sold, there were over 1,200.
Wow.
And then, significantly more than that when now.
Yeah. And then how many years did it take from your phoning people out of your closet or whatever the very beginning was up to 1,200 lawyers?
It was actually 16 years, Mo.
Yeah. That's
So it was a
amazing.
while. Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to share that sort of results end of it to share that people can accomplish so much more than they think they can. And I think one thing that's really interesting is when you're in those trenches in those early days, making those 10 phone calls a day, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's 3 o'clock. I've only made 8. I've got to get 2 more in. I got 2 more meetings, whatever. Boy, it can seem like a slog. But wouldn't you say, Jane, sort of finish us up with this, doesn't it get a little bit easier all the time or at least the universe starts to send things your way because somebody remembers a phone call you made 4 months ago? Or just tell us about the emotional journey, and then we'll wrap up this episode.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And I think, I will never forget one lawyer that I actually met with. And, he wasn't a lawyer I would ever place, to be honest. He didn't fall into, because we were really working with people, I always said, that had experience, had certain credentials, et cetera. And this gentleman didn't, but somebody had said he was struggling, go talk with her. And I met with him. And my first thing I said to him is, you need to get a handkerchief and you need to wipe your hand off before you go into a meeting, because you're so nervous. And then I talked with him about his differentiator. I said, because you've got to learn to sell yourself. You can't get a job. And if somebody asks a question, you've got to answer it. But at the same time, what are your differentiators? And so I really worked with him on what it was he was selling, which was himself, in order to try to get a job. And I also let him know who would possibly be interested in hiring him, because he had struggled academically. And he had really good reasons why, but again, but I worked with him. And then, about a year later, I was at an event and he came up and he just gave me the largest hug, and he was now flourishing in his career. And so I thought, what I'm doing is making a difference in some small way. And I didn't receive a penny off of that, and I didn't care, but I helped him, and now he's doing wonderful things to help others. Yeah. And so I think for me, that makes it all worthwhile. And, if in fact you can use the gifts that you've been blessed with and help make the world, no matter how small your world may be, a better place, then it makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, Jane, that is the perfect mic drop ending to this episode. You're now CEO of the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center. You've had so much success. Now you're helping others build their business. Where should people go to reach out to you, to learn more about what you do, to say thank you for this episode, or anything else?
No, thank you. This is hopefully a way I'm paying it forward and leaving this a little better than I found it. It's a nonprofit in Nashville, and it's called the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. It's ec.co is its website. And then my email is jane.allen@ec.co.
That's awesome. Everybody, I know Jane really well. She'd be happy to hear from any of you. If you have any kind of question, reach out to her. She's doing some great, you've always done a lot of great work, Jane, and now you're paying it forward in a way to help other people do things similar to what you've done. So thanks for being on the show. We've got 4 more coming, audience. This is just really, really great stuff. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, it's Mo Bunnell, your host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. If you didn't catch the classic, inspiring entrepreneurial story of Jane Allen and how she created Counsel on Call, go back and listen to the last episode because it was A++. Jane, you were fantastic. In this episode, I want to dig deeply into something. I have a guess for where you might go, but I'm not sure. This is going to be a lot of fun. What's your personal definition of business development?
My personal definition of business development is proactive problem solver.
Ooh, I like that. Go deeper. Tell me more.
Well, I think that if in fact you are trying to sell something, it should be something that people need, and they may not even know they need it.
Yep.
And in some instances, they already use something, and you know they need something that's better, and they may not even realize it. And so I think it's a part of being proactive in selling them something that they may not already have or may not see. And then you're solving a problem, again, that they may not know that they have or they may not see. Or you are solving a problem that absolutely they know they have, but you're doing it in a way that is proactive versus just responding. I think as somebody that's been in sales, I get a little frustrated if I'm paying money and all they're doing is taking an order. If it's something that's really inexpensive and they should have service with it, or they should let me know more about it. And now we live in an order taking society, but
Yep.
it's one thing if I'm going to do that for my cup of coffee I drink every day. It's another thing if I'm actually buying a new dishwasher. I want to be sold. Tell me why I want this one. So it's just that.
Yeah, I really like it. That old saying of none of us like to be sold to, but we all like to buy. That feels like it dovetails off of what you said. So now go a click deeper. So think of our audience, people with one foot in the delivery of some technical service, offering a big services contract, whatever. But that same human being has to be on the hook for retention, for growth, for finding the next person that needs their expertise. When if you have somebody who is struggling with this idea of being proactive, because I see that more of a struggle than being a problem solver. What do you tell people that are struggling with, well, I don't want to reach out because so-and-so didn't return my email one time, or, they're not calling me. They'll call me when they know I'm out there. They'll call me when they need the thing. What do you say to people that need to be dialing up their proactiveness?
So, and I can't take credit for this, but I was told this by someone one time who managed a large sales force, and it stuck with me, and I've always said it, is it's not their job to call you. It's not their job to respond to the email. And so with all due respect, your job is to get the meeting.
Yeah. And then once you get the meeting, keep going. What's their job in that meeting?
Well, I think that it depends on the meeting. If it's the first meeting, and then, and I often say the best meeting is when someone says, I am sorry, but I will never work with you. And I'll try to understand why. But if they tell me that, that's awesome, because then I'm not going to waste my time. I think the worst meetings are, oh yeah, that's really interesting. Why don't you call me? Or why don't you just leave your materials and then call me in a month? And then it's like, oh my gosh, death by 1,000 little slices, because they were never going to work with me, but they can't reject me. And so I think it's, why are you getting the meeting? Don't waste their time. Be prepared. Do your research. Know exactly. But yet you go in there. And my personal style is conversational. So even though I may have all the answers, I would never go in there acting like I have all the answers. Because the reality is I don't, because there's some questions I'm going to ask that I don't have answers to. But I might ask, oh, where did you go to law school? Well, I know where they went to law school. I mean, I do my research. I don't just walk in cold. So, I guess it's, what is the purpose of the meeting? Are you trying to get the order? Are you trying to get an advancement? What are you, is it a sell that is going to take multiple meetings? And so then you're really just trying to get the next meeting. I mean, so I think that's the reason it's tough to know how to answer what do you do in that meeting?
Yeah, good point. It's not like there's one universal answer, but if we go back to first principles, proactive problem solver, like you laid out,
Oh,
then if you're in meeting one and you determine, man, I've done my research, I asked some really thought-provoking questions. Maybe you find out for a big retailer that they have hundreds of real estate leases that are coming up every single year. They're spending a lot to figure that out, or maybe they're not being able to keep up with it proactively or whatever. Say you hear that back in the old days when you're CEO of Counsel on Call, what might in that scenario might you suggest for a next meeting?
well, and then it would be, we have a solution to your problem. And so then you start talking about the solution to the problem and why it's in their best interest to take the next meeting. Are you going to save them money? Are you going to save them time? You're not going to sacrifice quality. You can drive efficiency. You can provide metrics. You can provide data. Like, what information does your solution offer that they're not getting that they need?
Yeah. So I'm going to spring something on you, Jane, because you and I didn't prepare for this. I think you're going to love it. One of the things that we found recently working with experts that are, also have a business development role, retention and growth, is a lot of times people get super excited when they do find a potential problem for them to solve. And here's our metaphor, see if you like it. They try to pack a whole Netflix season into one meeting. Like, I'm now going to tell you every single thing you ever could. And a better Netflix season has cliffhangers between one episode and the next. Those last 3 minutes where something happens that's unresolved, and you weren't going to watch that next show, but now all of a sudden you're like, all right. And I think there's a metaphor there for meetings, business development meetings, where if you can have one meeting that doesn't resolve everything, but there's a cliffhanger. In our scenario we're playing out, it might be, hey, you know what? We've got some amazing people that specialize in leases at large retailers like you. Would it be helpful if I introduce you to one of those folks from our team, and they can share what they've learned to make this go well? That could be a cliffhanger. Yeah, I'd love to meet her. So your thoughts on just this idea of people getting really excited about, I'll now talk really fast and try to share every single proof point I can about my solution, versus breaking it up into meetings with a bit of a cliffhanger between each one to make the client excited about taking the next step in the journey?
Yeah, I think I have two thoughts. One is, I absolutely agree. We have a mutual friend, Dennis McKinney, who is one of dear friends, and also will help build and grow Counsel on Call. And Dennis and I would actually call it, we're the greyhounds and they've let the rabbit and we're off. And, and it was like, so, I think that is absolutely true. I love your Netflix. Of course, Netflix didn't exist back then, but I love your Netflix analogy. My only caveat would be, they've got to understand why it's important to take that next meeting, because I have had people come in and sell me, and it's clear their measure of success is getting a next meeting, but I'm not clear on why it's worth my time to take a next meeting. And why would I want to meet with your expert on leases? Like, what's it going to do for me? It's great. You're going to check your box and get your metric. So, I'm probably one of the hard sells. Because I can see the game being played a little bit, but I also really respect and value time, because that's our most precious commodity, no matter who we are. And so I think mine would be, yes, get the cliffhanger. And I think it's implicit in what you're saying, but just to say it is, but make them really want to watch that next episode, because you've got so much secret sauce in there, to where it's, oh my gosh, it really is in my best interest to take my time and give you yet another chunk of it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And a lot of times the four great cliffhangers, these will correspond to the Herman brain dominance instrument, which you'll remember. Mm-hmm. Great cliffhangers typically are metrics. So I'll give 4 examples: metrics, numbers, cost savings, ROI analysis, proof, some kind of deeper dive into money, metrics, numbers, whatever. That's one. The second one, process. Maybe this person can come in and share how they've re-engineered processes like this. And we'll show you exactly how it's done, because they're probably going to realize that they need us to do it, if we're back in the Counsel on Call days. To just meet the person and see if we connect would be a third one. Hey, I think you're really going to love Philippe or Sue or whoever. And I just want to make sure you guys feel like you connect really well. I think you're really going to enjoy each other, but let's make sure that happens. You'd be doing a lot of work together someday if we work together. And the fourth example is like a brainstorming session or new ideas, or let's really think through how this could work if it worked really well. So if you go back to the four, numbers or metrics, process, some kind of people connection, and then some kind of strategic idea or brainstorming is the fourth. And boy, those can be really great cliffhangers from getting from one to the next. To your point, you got to make it clear why that's beneficial to the other side. Yes. Your thoughts? Yep.
And I think ideally in that initial conversation, you're understanding what their problem is. I mean, do they need metrics to be able to support a budgetary ask? Do they need, and so hopefully during that initial, you're really understanding, instead of trying to sell your solution, you're trying to understand what their problem is, and then you're trying to make sure your solution fits it, and then giving them the metrics or the person or whatever. And I think your four are great. Whatever that is that will help meet them where they are to solve their real problem, which would take it to the next meeting. So yes, I agree.
Well, it just fits so well with your three words, proactive problem solver, because the proactive is the offer for the next meeting. The problem solver is giving them exactly what they need to understand things more, to write up a business case, to get approvals, to feel good about it because they met the person. Any of those things all it all flows back to proactive problem solving. Yeah. Jane, this has been so good. I think it's a power-packed episode. Where should people go to connect with you, to say thank you for this, to hear about what you're doing as CEO for the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center, to find out more about how you're helping other people succeed?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Mo. I am here in Nashville, and as Mo said, it's the Nashville Entrepreneur Center. It's www.ec.co. It's a nonprofit. Hopefully this is a way to pay it forward a little bit and help other entrepreneurs on their road to success. And my email is jane.allen@ec.co.
That's awesome, Jane. Thanks. So everybody, make sure you follow, subscribe, all set up your notifications for the show, all those kind of things. Reach out to Jane, because Jane has this. You've had so much success building up and selling a business, and now you're out there helping other people basically become younger versions of yourself in some ways, right? Like, do the things that you did. You're out there helping it. I think it's awesome. So everybody, reach out to Jane. Jane, thanks for being on the show. This has been a blast.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mo.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here. This is the third of 5 episodes with Jane Allen. Jane is CEO of the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center. She's now helping other people codify the business they want, figure out how to start it, and figure out how to scale it. And she's had so much success herself doing this. Now she's building out systems to help all of you. So I think that's neat, Jane. You have 2 pieces to all that you can help our audiences. One is telling you how you did what you did, and also telling how you help people do it now. So in this episode 3 of 5, I want to know what's your, in the snowball system or grow big training, anything, what's your favorite science, step, or story?
Wow. When we engaged Grow Big, we had amazing people that had believed in this vision and had come on board, all lawyers. And we were all being salespeople. And again, we never really thought of it that way, but that's what we did, because we would try to work to help our clients or prospective clients solve problems. And so it was clear we needed help. And so we brought in Mo and the Grow Big team. And I think the most fascinating thing, and this is probably the most basic, and this may not be what you want to hear, but was the personality testing. Because we had all been on calls and you just couldn't connect. And and you'd walk away thinking, oh my God, that guy just hated me. And then you realize, oh my God, they're a processor. So it just almost validated meetings we had in our past, but it also set us up to really better prepare for meetings in the future. And then we all evaluated each other and knew how to approach one another and how to work better together. And so that was really, even in talking to the team, like that was the light bulbs were just going off in everybody. And it was just that basic, because that was somewhat the foundation from which then we grew, and with you and your team and the coach, and and help create a sales program.
You did. And to build on that, one of the things that I thought you did exceptionally well, and I don't know if you even realize this, I don't know if I've ever shared it, honestly, is you scaled things. I mean, Jane, though, you had a systems mindset where you had scaled, all this staffing side of things, recruitment, finding amazing people that wanted to practice law but didn't fit into the big law firm kind of model or the in-house model. And you found a way for them to live the life they want, but still have a big impact as, practicing as a lawyer and make the money they want and all those things. And then with that systems mindset, you did a better job of scaling across a big organization, all the whole business development system that we work together on, better than anybody else. Like, you did a great job of helping people talk to each other, talk about the skills, talk about the techniques, get better, fine tune, coach each other, all those kind of things. What are your thoughts around the idea that business development is a system, that it's teachable, that people can help each other get better at it? Talk about that scale perspective, because I think you have a really unique perspective there.
No, that's fascinating. You had never shared that, so thank you. And just
it's true.
All Counsel on Call Staffing, we were a legal services company, and we came up with that terminology. And my people, we were placement coordinators, and we were client managers or whatever. So I mean, we were just we wanted to create something that didn't exist. And but yes, and so that was somewhat, and at the same time, I do think that's how is efficiency would probably be the word that sort of drives me in a lot of ways, is how can we do things more efficient? And so I think with your training and how we scaled it is, how do you grow, but yet not lose the personal relationship? And the communication is at the key of that. I mean, even as we would go into a client and we're trying to allow all these different, arms to work together, it was, you've got to have a central hub of communication, because otherwise people are going to do things and they're going to do it wrong. And then you have to go back and redo it, and that's expensive. And so it was always about efficiency, but yet keeping that personal relationship with communication. And so I think that as we grew, and, once we implemented, we just set that as a priority. We also would role play with each other. We all have been lawyers. I mean, I've been in a decision to make, I've been in positions to make decisions on behalf of the firm or a client. And so we would role play and learn and critique. And, and if you can get through that and be on videotape, and, as if you can get through that, and then you can get through anything. So I think it really was. But so we tried to make it fun, and we'd pretend we'd have a mock cocktail party, and, we would just do all those things so that, and if, and then, we're all lawyers. So, somebody would drop a clue, and did they pick up on the clue or did they not? And if they didn't, were you already talking instead of really listening? So it was just, we just took everything we learned and we tried to make it real and try to make it fun, and we tried to practice it.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, I 100% agree. I remember it well. And the other things is that you created databases. Oh, yeah. So give to gets. Everybody logged their give to gets, and you would sort of track, this one worked, this one didn't as well. What do we change? Objections. How do we handle when we get this question? What question do we ask back? What are different? Third thing, how do we ask for the next step in a way that's meaningful, helpful, maybe as a proactive problem solver? Everybody go back and watch the last episode. Mm-hmm. So like one of the things I really stands out about that working with you was how you systematize things, how you helped people use the skills and continue to evolve. I mean, the team was building these databases, not you, like they were doing it together. They were winning, they were getting traction. And then that last piece, people were having fun. Like it felt like a winning team mentality. It was exciting to be around. So was that all purposeful? I mean, obviously we're trying all kinds of different ways to make that work. But from your perspective, remembering back, were you focusing on all that stuff, like systematizing practice and fun, or that was natural? What were you thinking?
Probably a little of both. I mean, I had, when I had started, it was just me. And then when I hired the first, or not hire, when the first few people came on board and believed in what we were, or what I was doing, or what we were doing, it was Greg and me, but I was doing the sales,
Yep.
what we were doing, it was just come in and do what Jane does and learn by osmosis. And then it became really clear, well, that really doesn't work. And so you had to take what you do naturally and actually start creating, process. And so again, for me, it was how many calls to get a meeting and how many meetings to get an order. And so you're hiring people and they want to know how much money they can make. And so it's like, well, in order to get this many people working, and then you're going to have to make probably this many calls. And then it's really fun because also goal oriented, that would challenge, I want to get it less. I mean, so if I make a call, I want an order, and so that was just sort of in my DNA. And I think, Greg was also very much, the business has to be bigger than the individual. And you have to capture the data so that we can help learn and grow and evolve. And he was a big believer in you write everything down so that you can measure. So even if I went to an event, it would be, what am I going to accomplish at this event? Because let's face it, guys, I'd rather be home with my family. I mean, no offense, but it was like, I'm taking time out in an evening to go to an event. So what do I want to accomplish? And write it down and leave it in my car. And then go to the event knowing I have to go back in my car and I have to look at that piece of paper and I've got to give myself a grade. And so I'm an internally competitive person and I don't want an F. And so and I would go to an event because it was somebody I couldn't get a meeting with otherwise. And so it would be, I'm going to have to suck it up, put my shoulders back, walk up and introduce myself and convince that person why she should meet with me. And, and so then you either do it or you don't. And then if you do it, it either works or it didn't. And I think it's just being very intentional. So then and that's a very granular way, but it did help us as we were growing. We needed to know, because I would have somebody, I went on 30 calls, but productivity was 0. Well, let's be real. Going out to have coffee with your friends, that isn't really a call. I mean, and so let's be real about these things. And so let's really start documenting and tracking. And it was also accountability, but it also helped us grow so that we could then tell others when they came on board, basically, here's how long it takes in order to really start bringing in business. And so for me, metrics, and that's what we did in the profession, quite honestly, is we went from helping women stay in the profession to being a metrics driven organization to allow lawyers to have budgets and be able to have visibility. So,
well, this is so good, Jane. And I think everybody go back and watch the first episode with Jane. If you're dropping on this one's really good. It's awesome. But I want you to hear how Jane tells the original story of starting Counsel on Call, why, some of the metrics she tracked and all that. So we don't need to rehash that now, Jane, because it's already in episode 1. We're in episode 3. But everybody, seriously, if you're dropping on this one, go back and listen to the first one. It was awesome. It'll provide you context for this question. So with that said, you started the business, Jane, by pulling back and trying to create a scorecard for yourself. Metrics, and this is nuance in what you said, but there were metrics that you could control. And I think that's really interesting. Mm-hmm. So tell me just your personal belief. You don't have to worry about what words are in Grow Big or whatever, but just for your personal viewpoint on folks, especially around business development, pulling back to metrics they can control and tracking them so that they can have success over the long haul.
Get real. I mean, I think at the end of the day, and I mean, get real by being honest. It's the 30 cup of coffees. If you're not really meeting with people who are decision makers who could actually make the purchase or can help you get to that, is that really a good use of your time? I mean, everyone I would think that's watching is in sales and they may be past this point, but at the end of the day, it really is about being honest on how you spend your time. and then being very deliberate on what you do with the time that you have.
This is gold. And so if you were talking to somebody that had already developed their deep technical expertise, they're a really, really great expert in whatever it is, but they're having trouble finding the people to hire them. What would be your words of wisdom for them?
How are you different? Why? Because I'm already doing business with somebody. So why would I change? And when I'm going to change, I'm taking a risk. So how are you going to eliminate my risk to make me look better?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. So focusing first on how you're different, then maybe the next step might be who would hire somebody in that role. Maybe they know that, maybe they don't, figuring that out. And then you're making proactive problem solving kind of outbound efforts to get in front of them. Like your story about writing the list in the car. I'm going to go to this event because the people I need to meet are there, and I need to introduce myself to X many of them.
Right. And I was thinking I have the meeting, but yes, at the end of the day, mine was, I would look and say, okay, here's an event. Here are the people that are going to be speaking, or here are the people that are going to be there. Can I pick up the phone and get the meeting? If so, why do I need to go to the event?
Oh, yeah.
If I can't, then it's worth my time to go to the event. But by gosh, if I'm going to the event, I'm going to maximize my time, because I'm at least going to connect with the person and know whether I can get a meeting and or get them on the phone to at least talk to me about what it is I'm doing. Because I also don't want to sell them at an event, but I want them to be willing to take my phone call or all the way to the meeting.
Yes, fantastic. And the common thread through a lot of what you said is really getting focused on your limited amount of time, and how do you make the most of that, as opposed to fooling yourself like I'm doing BD when I'm not doing BD kind of things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Powerful. Yeah, well, I'll share this. You may remember this. Just this conversation had me thinking back to some of the metrics we used when we worked together, and we had some quality metrics like give to gets offered. And if you remember that, and boy, that spiked up over time once we learned the proper way to make an investment in an organization we don't do work with. And the other thing we measured was a quantity measured, which was hours spent on true business development activities. And man, remember that we created definitions. This counts, this doesn't. Right. And so going to lunch with your law firm friends that aren't in a decision making role, that does not count.
Right.
And when we measured the quality and the quantity, in this case, the give to get offered and the number of hours spent on business development per week, man, results that were already good got better. And that was sort of cool.
Yeah. I think that's the reason when you asked that, get real was sort of my first thought, because that was always a challenge. And so you all definitely helped us with that by the metrics and then defining what is really a business development and what is really, and what is a good give to get. So yes, thank you for that reminder. Mm-hmm.
No, it was fun. It just popped in my mind from long ago. Quality metric. The point of that is quality for the audience, not for you, Jane. You already know it, but quality metrics and quantity metrics. If you can get one of each that really matches your book of business, your relationships that you're trying to develop out in the marketplace, boy, that can be a really powerful combination. One quality and one quantity metric. All right, Jane. People are going to want to reach out to you. They're going to say thank you for this awesome episode. Maybe learn more about what you're doing as CEO of the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center. Where should they go?
Yes, www.ec.co. And my email is jane.allen@ec.co. We're a nonprofit, been here 11 years in Nashville, and working to surround entrepreneurs with resources to increase their probability of success.
I love it. Folks, and Jane has had so much success on her own, and now she's helping others achieve the great things that she's achieved. It's a pretty cool role. So Jane, thanks a ton for being on the show, everybody. Don't forget, subscribe, follow, set up those notifications, all that stuff, because we got 2 more awesome episodes coming your way with Jane.
All right. Thank you.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here, your host at Real Relationships, Real Revenue, episode 4 with Jane Allen. She is CEO of the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center, one of the most inspiring people that I've ever gotten a chance to work with. I'm getting fired up, Jane, just by talking with you now. And this episode 4 in this season is all about being inspiring. And I just love this question because it leads to some follow-up questions and some nitty-gritty on how you're wired and why you do what you do and all those kind of things. I can't wait to get into it. The headline, though, is tell me of a story, tell me a BD story that you personally are deeply proud of.
A BD story that I personally am deeply proud of would be when I was with Counsel on Call, and I had been listening to people who were in positions of managing litigation for corporate America, and they all were just overwhelmed with all the data that was just exploding in the early 2000s. And their budgets were getting blown, and the general counsels were under fire, and it was just a mess. And sort of, but in listening, you kept hearing the same things over and over and over. And then there was this one person who was pretty forward thinking, and we went to dinner one night, and it was, well, what if we did this? And it was something that really hadn't existed before. And it was, well, why not? And then, but it was, well, what about this? And what about that? And, and all of the objections, and then overcoming objections. And then it was, well, maybe we'll bring in a partner, to do it more traditional. But then once we did that, we tried that. And then the client ended up calling me back and saying, that's like moving a barge. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it. We're doing something new. We're going to do something exciting, and we're going to partner with you to do it. And so for me, it was having listened for a while and then coming up with a solution together, and then having somebody willing to take the risk to do it because it had not been done before. And so I think, and then others started following suit, and other, it just started snowballing, so to speak. But it really was just truly collaboratively working to solve real problems that they individually were dealing with versus what my company was dealing with versus what law firms were dealing with versus what the individual lawyers were dealing with. It was, and so for me, that was exciting. I never really looked at it as BD, but Mo, I always looked at it as this is somebody that really needs help. And I think I can understand, I definitely understand why, but I think I can help piece together the pieces to really help. And then it also helps my lawyers because it's a way to be able to practice with boundaries. And so I always said it was a win-win. And that's the best kind of client relationship.
So go deeper. Why, when they said, we want to do this, it's almost like they weren't sure how it was going to be done. Mm-hmm. There was an issue. You would both fall in love with the problem, not your solutions, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. And when they said, we're going to do this and we are going to partner with you, mm-hmm. I assume that's where like an immense moment of pride swelled up inside you. Is that right? Yeah, go.
No. Mo, as an entrepreneur, you don't take time to get prideful because you're just like, no. I've got to make sure we deliver exactly what it is I just sold. And I've got to make sure I have the right people. And all right, you're just racing. And that's what I always laugh and say. That's one of the challenges of being an entrepreneur is you really don't take time to reflect, or you don't take time to say, oh, that was great. It's, oh, wow, this is awesome. And oh my gosh, think of these people that we can get. And this is, I can't say that I really did. I really can't say that I did.
Yeah. Well, what was it? Well, I guessed a little bit too. I sort of jumped to the punchline. What was it about that experience that as you look now, you do have pride in?
Yeah. Because it was one, finding a person who was willing to take a risk.
Yeah.
Who was in a position to do that. And then in ways being able to deliver what had always been delivered a certain way so differently that enabled lawyers, my lawyers, to actually practice law in a whole different way. And they had boundaries and they didn't have to go into the big firm, and they really could do really interesting work and be a valuable part of a team. And that same team still exists today. I mean, we're sitting here, 18 years later, and that same team of lawyers are still working with that same client. And then once you get that, it's how do we make it better? And that's where, we need to look at what the best technology is, and we need to look at process and project management. And, it's just an evolutionary growth. And we need to provide metrics so the client can actually show why they were able to cut their costs, even though, the volume has quadrupled, and the quality of the work. And so, I mean, again, it was just the beginning of something that continued to evolve, and then others would do it too, but it was always continuing to evolve to provide solutions that the clients really needed.
Yeah. As you look back from your whole career, and you had the guts to go off on your own and basically start you basically created an entire new way of practicing law that was beneficial to the clients, but maybe in some ways even more beneficial to the people practicing, as we talked about in the last couple episodes, especially the first episode. Everybody go back and watch that. It's really cool. As you look back over the whole arc of your career, and now you're at the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center and you're paying it forward, you're helping all these other people achieve things like you were able to, those feelings of helping others, of having great success. As you think about your whole career, what are you most proud of?
I think the people that I had the opportunity of working with and hopefully helping in some way, the people I learned so much from, whether it was Dennis, whether it was Andy, whether it was Tracy, whether it was, everybody you learn from, and just really.
But let me push you a little bit.
Okay.
Because I know you're like giving all the credit to everybody else, and you should. I know those people. They're amazing, right? They're really amazing. Like, I smile just hearing the word Dennis. Like, he's such an amazing human being. But I want to know, the audience wants to know right now, you personally, as you reflect back, what are you proud of that you did?
That's a tough one, Mo. I think I'm proud that I took the chance. That I think I'm proud that I took the chance. And I really can't even take credit for that, because honestly, my husband, Greg, is the one that pushed me. And it was like, Jane, what do you have to lose? You can go practice law. And so, but at the end of the day, it was, I ended up I had 3 children. My youngest was 6 months old when I started this thing. I think everybody thought I was crazy, but yet Greg didn't. And we didn't have outside investors. We put our own savings into it. And I think what he and I built together is probably what I'm most proud of.
Yeah, that is super cool. And then that take the chance idea. God, what would the world look like, all these people you've helped, if you wouldn't have taken the chance? And I think that's over the long haul. But then I know you well enough to know you take the chance all the time. Like, you take the chance and pick up the phone and call somebody for the 17th time. I don't mean that in a naggy way. I mean it in a proactive way. You're going to invite them to something. You're going to find a way to get in front of them if they need your services. Jane, you're somebody who takes the chance. And I think that's just something that there's something really meaty there to learn from. I don't know. I can't add any more.
Well, I think in sales, I always say, and I even tell this to my children, reach for it. What's the worst going to happen? They're going to tell you no. Well, rejection is a part of life, and we can learn a lot from rejection, and we've all been rejected. And so once you understand that, it's okay, and I think that's part of taking a chance is, you might as well go for it.
I love it. I think that's just the perfect end to this episode. It's just so good. So, Jane, people are going to want to reach out to you. They want to say thank you for this. They're going to learn more about what you're doing as CEO of the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center. Where should they go?
Sure. It's www.ec.co. It's a nonprofit in Nashville. It's been here 11 years. And then my email is jane.allen@ec.co.
Awesome. Everybody, if you didn't, this episode is so great. I love finding what really inspires people. Jane, it's been neat to dig into what inspires you and what you're proud of as well. And everybody, go back and listen to that. The first episode in this series of 5, this is the 4th. The first one talks into digging into how Jane started Counsel on Call, and a little bit more of the background that we got into this episode as well. Jane, thanks for being on the show. This has been a blast.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mo.
Hey everybody, Mo Bunnell here. I'm just having a blast with Jane Allen. Jane is the CEO of the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center. She founded a company called Counsel on Call. It became Agility. Just really, really cool person, Jane, to boot. So super fun question as we finish things up. Because you've had so much success, I think it's interesting. If you could record a video around business development or growth skills and send it back to your younger self, what would you say?
Embrace it.
Oh, go deeper. Yeah.
I was the kid I was the youngest of 4. And so especially my 2 older siblings, they would have me go door to door and sell the magazines and sell the candy. And inevitably people would buy them for me. So I had Humpty Dumpty and I had all these magazines and I had all the candy. And so not only could I sell it, I would sell it and they would end up giving it to me. And, and I think I was just born that way. I was born to connect to people, but I would never call myself outgoing. And so I think I've learned now at my old age, just embrace it. It's what brings me joy. And I really do enjoy it.
So you just said something there that is super interesting. I want to dig deeper, and I think the audience will love this too. There's a bit of dichotomy in what you said. I was born to connect with people, but I'm not outgoing. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. Tell me more.
Well, and when I say outgoing, I know we have all these labels. And so are you an introvert or are you an extrovert? Yep. I would never call myself an introvert, but I also don't necessarily want to be the life of the party. And so I think for me, I really love my quiet time. I love my family time. I love to be with the people that I value the most. And so when I would go out, and I would have to travel for work or go to meetings. And, it was never like, oh yeah, once I got there, it was, but leaving, it would be, you know what, put on your big girl pants and let's go. And so it was never I want to go to a party every night. It would be, this is a job and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to maximize my time at this party. And so I think there are some people that just want to be, and they're awesome, but they want to be around lots of people all the time. And I view those more as the outgoing type. And for me, I'm not necessarily that person naturally.
Yeah. I have some of the same. Like Becky has to drag me out of the house sometimes. She's like, we told them we're going to the party. You're going to go to the party. And I think a lot of times people see me on stage or teaching classes or doing whatever we're doing. And they think I'm like that all the time. I'm not. I need a lot of that quiet time. And by default, I go way to the quiet. I'm like, I want to read a book. I want to go for a long run. But once I'm there, it's fine. And then I love it because I'm learning from others and connecting. So that's the not outgoing part. It seems like both of us are sort of like in the middle. We can go either way, but lean towards the quiet side.
I always called like my home my sanctuary.
Yes.
And again, it was never quiet with 4 kids and a spouse and 2 dogs, but it was definitely my place where I would need to go and where I really love to be.
Yeah.
But then once I get there, I love it.
Yeah, now Becky can't get me to leave because I'm talking with somebody in the corner about some new idea or whatever. So go deeper on the born to connect part. So that's the not outgoing part. But why do you say I was born to connect? Why is that? Is it a helpful nature? Is it, what is it?
I don't know. I don't really know. I think, as I look at my parents, I'm probably a combination genetically. My mom was a nurse and a caregiver. Um, you know, I think that she was the person that if you found a lost dog, you went to. She was the person if you skinned your knee, you went to. Or she was the person that if people had problems, they went to. And then my father was more, he knew lots of different people. And so if you needed something, he knew who to call. And and I think I'm probably a combination of those two, in that I like to help people solve their problems. I don't go out looking for them, except with work, obviously that was but I love that. But I also love to be able to connect people to the resources or the people or whatever they need to get it done.
Yeah. So once you're out there, once you're talking to somebody, which you've been incredible in your life at creating mechanisms to make you do it. Tracking your phone calls, tracking I'm going to this networking event. I will meet these three people with names on a list. You've created these accountability and these motivational mechanisms to get over the outgoing hump, if you will. It sounds to me, and knowing you reasonably well, once you're with the person, you're 100% focused on how to be helpful to them. Is that right?
Well, I wish I could say I was 100% Mo. That's still what I work for. But yes, I mean, I enjoy it. I really
Yeah.
do. I do care. Like, I want to hear what you did. Like, if I always laugh about my spouse. He's sort of quiet, but if he asks a question, he asks hard questions. And I'm like, it's really because he cares and he wants to know the answer. I more like to hear your story. Like, I'm
Mm.
not going to go and say, okay, Mo, why this? But I would say, so Mo, how did you start this? And what got you into this? And I'm asking because I really want to know the answers because I actually care. If that makes sense.
Yeah, you used the word authentic back in the first episode and asking for help when you were first getting the word out on Counsel on Call. You were truly asking for help, asking for advice, seeing what somebody's feedback was on the business model. Because you didn't create a company. I know you did that. You created a whole category of companies, Jane. The idea of a legal service provider is something that was sort of born with you and the people around you that helped you build the whole thing. So back to the connecting with people, I think knowing you well enough, like you are authentically looking to help people all the time. And if that included your organization you were working for or you are now, made sense. But if it didn't, if you had a better solution, you would have provided that. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, it was. And I think I guess so. I mean, I think that's part of, it's what I enjoyed about, I was a school teacher, before I ever was a lawyer.
Really? I didn't know that.
Mhm.
Yeah, my wife was too.
And so I loved helping kids understand complex problems and making
Yeah.
it so simplistic and seeing the light bulbs go off. And then as a lawyer, that's what I think I said earlier in an episode. I loved helping clients solve problems. I tried to put them at ease. I tried to understand where they were and in what was part of their journey, and and how this is such an upheaval to their journey and how we can help them get through it. And so I think that's what, even with Counsel on Call, it was trying to help solve a problem of women leaving the profession, and then also of trying to hire lawyers when you have so much uncertainty about the future, and how can you connect those two challenges so that they work, so it's a win-win. And and when I say embrace it, I think that's what I finally have come to realize is that's really what I like doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what brings fulfillment. You always, hope and pray you find your purpose. Well, I still don't know that I have found it, but I'm hopeful it's in helping people connect and
Yeah.
and to where, and so that, yeah.
Yeah. Well, just to wrap up a couple things from prior episodes, folks, go back and listen to the first episode where Jane talks about asking for help, how she motivated herself with metrics, how she was authentic in all those. In the second episode, talking about being a proactive problem solver. I think that sort of flows right from some things that you just mentioned. So let's wrap up this episode with this. Tell us just a bit about this idea of embracing it, the fact that you're born to connect. Maybe not outgoing, but that's okay. Hey, I can raise my hand and say I'm the same. What are the kinds of things you're doing now as CEO of the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center that everybody should know about?
Yeah, no, thank you. The Nashville Entrepreneur Center is a nonprofit, and it was started because Nashville is a very entrepreneurial town. And quite honestly, when I started my company, I didn't know what an entrepreneur was, but I knew there were successful business people in town. And so I just cold called them and said, can I come and pick your brain? Because I want to think more like you and less like me. And they all said yes. And so several of those people and our Chamber of Commerce got together and decided we would have a front door for entrepreneurs. So if you are an entrepreneur, no matter where you are on the life cycle and you are needing a resource, whether it's a mentor, and that's the big one. Mentor and advisors are big. And as you know that, Mo, even with your sales program, I mean, having somebody to help you and to hold you accountable. I mean, that's a big one. And so it's, connecting them to the resources they need to increase their probability of success. And so, and in sales, I mean, so many entrepreneurs think they can't sell. Well, you have to sell, because you have to be able to be the evangelist of what it is you're creating. And so, and then eventually, hopefully you're far enough along, you can hire Mo to work with your whole sales team. But in the beginning, you really do have to sell. And so helping them understand that and what it is they're trying to sell. So it's all different aspects. Or you're looking to raise funds, are you ready to go to that meeting? And all of those different things is what our team and our community, quite honestly, we have more than 300 people that volunteer with us.
Oh, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And it lets you leverage all the success and the relationships and the processes and the knowledge in your head to help others, and then scale it across this organization. Like you said, 300 other people helping you do that. So where should people go if they want to learn more about, or just connect with you in general, or learn more about the Nashville Entrepreneurial Center? Where should they go?
Yes, it's www.ec.co or jane.allen@ec.co.
This has been a blast. Jane, I'm inspired by your success. I'm inspired by the way that you go about it. I'm inspired by the way that you can crystallize it and communicate it. Thanks a ton for being on the show.
Sure. Thank you.